Welcome, everybody, to today's edition of PropTech Talks, where we talk with successful executives, investors, and entrepreneurs in the real estate industry, looking at the nuances of the industry and how to approach them. We've got Matt from Measurabl. I'm really excited for this one. Matt, good to have you.
Hey, good to be here, Matthew. Thank you.
Fantastic. So, before I guess looking at the industry, I think what would be quite interesting is to um, actually look at your quite unique journey, starting at CBRE and then moving to launching a leading platform. Yeah, I'd love to actually just hear about that in detail.
Sure. I think it's a great place to start. It's in the real estate business, right? So I began my career doing what we call maybe more traditional real estate, leasing and brokerage. I can't think of a better education in the real estate business than going around and doing what I did, which is knock on doors and look for tenants or occupiers to represent in their lease negotiations with landlords. The best part about this, maybe one of the more interesting things that connects me to my present path, is I did that in 2008. For those that have long enough memories, 2008 was not an auspicious year to get started in the real estate business. And quite the contrary, it was a horrific time. This is the GFC. People were losing their jobs, their businesses. And so, as you can imagine, going around and trying to find folks to work with in the real estate negotiations was a pretty tough order. But I had the chance through doing that to discover this phenomena, this early emerging trend around green building. Happy to talk more about that. But anyhow, that's the beginning of my career, was really, in real estate and real estate transactions, traditional real estate, not sustainable real estate.
Very, very exciting. And let's talk about Measurabl. It's the most widely adopted ESG platform for commercial real estate um, that there is. That's it's a unique position to be in. Well, what did the 2013 until now journey look like for you? And what would you say really you've taken away from this quite unique path you've walked?
Many things, certainly too much to cover in 30 minutes, right? But I can try to hit on a few of the major ones, both perhaps personal and professional. The genesis of Measurabl most fundamentally was around this idea of the green comp, the so-called green comp, this idea that in doing the business of real estate, we needed to compare one building to another building. That's always been a fraught exercise. We used its CBRE, what the industry calls comps, our database of market transactions, things like lease rate, tenant improvement allowance, free rent, so forth, to compare one asset and one leasing opportunity versus another. The challenge for sustainability was that there was no analogous way to compare carbon, energy, water, materials, health and well-being metrics. If you can't measure it and compare it, then you are lost in trying to do better capital B real estate business. So that was the genesis and the motivation of Measurabl, was to bring technology to bear there at that problem statement. A problem statement as old as the real estate business itself, just with these new set of material metrics. On the more personal side, as an entrepreneur, um, where can I start other than to say, at that time, 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13, which is when this business was incorporated, um, these observations that I'm sharing with you were not consensus observations. It actually wasn't the agreement of industry, and certainly not venture capitalists or investors who back our business, that these were problems that existed worth or were worth solving. This was still the time of cynicism and skepticism around the materiality of sustainability, or so-called green, in the real estate business. So I suppose that's one, first, reflection I can share is, in entrepreneurship, and I think in most endeavors worth taking, the path is not straight and it is not easy. Otherwise, many people would take it and they would walk it very quickly, right? Take that as a sign that you're maybe onto something, as opposed to running away from it, would be some advice there, unsolicited. I can share plenty of other things between that starting moment and where we're at today, which, as you mentioned, is the most widely adopted sustainability technology for real assets. I think the next one that I'd put out there is make sure you have a really expansive vision that is motivating to prospective employees, investors, and certainly to the industry and customers you want to serve. So if I had gone out there and said, hey, I want to solve a data collection problem for you, or I want to solve a reporting problem for you, that sounds like a nice feature or function, or maybe even as much as a product, but it is not a company. And it's far from arguing for and inviting a change towards what we call for, which is sustainable real estate, the wholesale transformation of the business of real estate. So I would definitely encourage entrepreneurs to think big and be bold and make sure that if you're saying something out there and it's about maybe, hey, I can make your life a bit easier or save you a few bucks on X, Y, and Z. I'm not suggesting that's not a business opportunity, but I would encourage people in the sustainability or climate business to really talk transformationally. And that's what I think we've been able to do in our business.
In prop tech, a lot of companies have sort of come up and gone down. You guys have grown since 2013. I was talking to another founder, and they were telling me about how the business has gone through sort of these metamorphoses, the things that the business was focusing on, and sort of reflecting on that. I was thinking, how does the founder and how does the CEO go through different metamorphoses as the business grows? What on day one, your life was very different to today. So, what might be main changes that you had to make with yourself to allow Measurabl to grow?
I didn't have kids when this business started. So let me talk to you about things that have changed, right? And the relationship that you need to have with your business to change. So first, let's just observe that change is a necessary and positive ingredient. I think that businesses should, there are some foundational things here. Like, we're not going to give up on the statement I made earlier about driving the transformation of sustainable real estate. The how that we do that, with whom, and your particular role in that, absolutely should change all the time. You should see that as an asset, not a liability. Your flexibility. Let's use a sports analogy, right? The most versatile players tend to be very successful. So as a CEO, or pick your role, I want to be very versatile and be able to change my role at the beginning from a catalyst, a call to action, maybe more of an inspirational leader, to maybe the middle years where it's very much product road mapping, market entry, capitalization, and say the kind of not, bonus plans and hiring and employee relationships and so forth. Call that very nuts and bolts of business, to where I'm at today, which is increasingly not as an operator of the business at all, but rather, again, where I began, a strategist and a visionary for what's next. And, that feels natural to me, not always easy to get there. But in any business that's been fortunate enough to be around like we have for over a decade, you would expect that, right? Maybe it's a circle or a sine wave, however you want to think about it. But I could tell you that the only problem here would be if I was exactly the same way that I was at the beginning. And I would want that for any of our employees. If you are still an intern here today, then you're probably not going to be here tomorrow if you put time into the business. Makes sense, right? We want that progress. Um, it's not going to be linear. Our business has grown faster or slower over the years, including very, very difficult years where we didn't really grow at all. This is the business and it is life, and they mirror one another. So that's my take on that.
Do you think the trajectory of the business and the interest of, say, sustainability, that understanding the green element of a portfolio has tangible impact on the value of the portfolio and what that actually looks like? The industry seems to understand it more and more. Is it as simple as people want the product more now? We make more money. Is it that simple? Or
Um, I wish that it were, and perhaps it is, and sometimes you want to overcomplicate things. But what problem are we solving here? And I can't tell you how often we miss or risk missing, or our industry, the service providers risk. The problem statement here is that real estate is debt and equity. It consumes equity and debt, plows that into real assets, and delivers returns. We could dress that up a lot. We could certainly talk about how one of my mentors, a guy named Tom Martinez, who was a longtime industrial broker, said, we are in the business of business. Real estate is shade and shelter for business activities. So we want to get in the mindset of what that business owner is solving for. And Tom was really onto the right thing here. So the business is not sustainability in of itself. And this is one of the most significant and obvious misses that I see routinely. For example, today I made a LinkedIn post talking about encouraging entrepreneurs in climate tech and sustainability startups to work backwards from what their customers solve for in their day-to-day business. I know it sounds obvious, and I'm sure that is a cliche. But why do we keep talking about compliance and reporting as if that is what our customers woke up to do every day? They don't. They're trying to return yield to their investors and shareholders. They're trying to deliver a business outcome for the occupier of that space. Can we please focus sustainability there and not speak to, yes, the sometimes pedestrian and necessary outcomes and outputs of that, which include things like reporting. But I just want to really draw a big distinction. And maybe the easy way to say it is, how do you make your customers money, not just save them on time and cost? The latter is okay, but the former is spectacular. And sustainability and climate tech entrepreneurs need to keep coming back to that over and over again. How did I make my customers money today?
And is that something that is sort of fundamental to, what an employee should be thinking about, even if even if it feels that what their what their actual activity is might be quite a finite task. Does that really run deep within the organization, or is that a way to might that cause a loss of focus? What do you think?
Well, if I got your question correctly, I think of it like it's a kick drum. You have to constantly beat on it, right? The whole band snaps to that. So in the background has to be this pulse of, where did we make the customer money? How could we make them more? And we have a particular skill set and expertise around this thing, sustainability, that can deliver that. So when you look at our case studies, you might look at, if you go to our website and you look at someone like a Nuveen or a BXP who is driving ROI off of our optimized product. It's an asset management tool that improves energy efficiency, carbon reductions in individual assets. It's highly granular deployment at the building systems level. And that cost savings drops through, and we track it through to NOI, net operating income, which is multiplied by a cap rate to get property value. There's your real estate equation 101. Anyone in the actual business of real estate knows that equation front to back and works it all day long. Why shouldn't we? So when I talk here about optimize, I want to make sure that I talk about, yes, carbon reductions as a byproduct of a more profitable real asset. And this is something we have a ritual in our business and try to do a lot. Everyone, whether you're an engineer or a product designer or an executive, should sound like that. And it's easy to drift because playing in time with a band is hard. But that's why the drummer is there. And that's more or less my function in the business, is to just make sure we keep hitting that beat in a steady way.
Let's say under the hood in Measurabl a little bit. I know you guys, maybe it's a bit old now, but you introduced Navigate, this the modular ESG platform. You guys are looking at AI, as I understand it, and looking at development in AI. How does I guess the business's product development evolve as the industry's interests, I guess, evolve slightly? I mean, everybody wants to, as you say, they earn more out of their assets, but
Sure.
how do you balance that relationship and stay flexible?
Sure. So we're talking about solutioning the customer, and it's going to go back to the problem, but let's the problem statement being more profitable, sustainable real estate, right? Or more profitable real estate using sustainability might be a better formulation for that. Let's focus though on the product delivery. So you mentioned navigate, and then you talked about AI. Let's add to that our ESG exchange product line for real estate capital markets. These are lenders and stock exchanges. These are things Measurabl offers in market. What is the common denominator to all of them from a product perspective? It is data. So AI is as good as the data against which it runs. Our Navigate solution, when you actually look at the architecture, it sits on something we call Quantum. Quantum is the world's largest repository of aggregated sustainability data on real estate. That takes a long time to say, but it's super important to say it. We've been measuring the granular details of building sustainability for over 12 years. We've done this now across nearly 100 countries, over 18 billion square feet, over 3 trillion in real estate asset value. What I'm giving you is data, a continuous assessment of what makes one building better than the other, per our earlier conversation on the green comp. The ESGX product line is a investigation of that data that we've amassed, looking for trends and performance characteristics and making them make sense. AI would just be a tool to help us do that. AI is not interesting in and of itself, except as it is applied to the data and the problem statement. So I hope what I've shared is a bit about like how we think at Measurabl, mostly about being the source of truth, the data set that allows you to understand, again, one building's performance relative to, so you can lease, lend, buy, sell, insure, refinance a real asset. And that is what our product delivery does, is everywhere you look at, you will see a set of data being value added in a very particular way for building operations, for lending, for stock exchange, etc.
It's quite interesting because you're making the statement, AI in itself, not really interesting. It's really going to come down to the data that supports it. Right now, there is a lot of, say, AI is really in the spotlight. And I think potentially that comes down to the fact that large language models are a medium that we can reflect on. So that would excite us. Do you think there is, real opportunity that as machine learning gets more advanced, can potentially a gargantuan spreadsheet that some poor intern is suffering going through now, a lot of insight can come out of it that previously could not have come out, or is this all just a lot of excited hype and there's some fundamentals that
It,
still need to be
it,
backed up?
I think it's an incredibly powerful tool to do something. What are we trying to do? We're trying to alter the equation for value creation in real estate. So if I can use AI to do that, yes, please, all day. And if I can use some other tools to do that, yes, please, all day as well there. The ways that we are using it today are in data acquisition, the sorting and collating of large data sets, public and private. The way that we can deliver a customer experience is a huge opportunity. I think we, as a software company, will be right along with everybody else in trying to contemplate how do we reimagine our product experience for our customers? Can we re-deliver it as opposed to through a UI in other ways? Can we integrate it into other existing tools? Look at how Microsoft has been using AI. It's Copilot. It sits in and augments the existing experience, which is some Excel spreadsheet or some Microsoft Word doc, Google for search, and so on. So I think we're at this moment where we're totally getting tools out. We're tech enabling technology, if that makes sense, and hopefully offering a better, more seamless, more pleasing experience. Let's be there now in terms of the ultimate transformation of our business or any other ones, like real estate overall. No doubt it's out there. AI would play a role in it. I'm sure other technologies as well. And they're building in the built environment. There's also some really, quote, dumb technology, hardware technology that bring tremendous efficiencies and gains too. One of our customers is a big fan of heat pumps, as they should be. We don't go on at great length on podcasts about heat pumps, but in terms of their transformative impact and efficiency gains, maybe we should. Right. So I think it's important to keep a wide view of the technologies the built environment can actually consume to improve. Some of them aren't that sexy or novel, but they still have a lot of room to run and huge impact to make.
You know what? It's funny you say that because speaking to my brother, and my brother is a first of all, he's a genius. So, so
Is he listening right now? So,
I don't think he if he is listening, hey Peter. But uh he's very much a product and engineer guy. And the thing about Peter is he loves very technical products. He loves them more so than the problem it solves. Okay. And even for us, someone might say a conference business is unsexy, but all I saw was massive asset class, a requirement to digitalize, and lots of great solutions. That's just, so to me it was sexy because there's a lot you can get out of. There's just a lot of activity there. I think a lot of investment in VC is going towards AI. There's a lot of high valuation there. But what would be your advice, I guess, to entrepreneurs who might be listening, to really have a successful journey?
well, in prop tech, so I'm not going to speak to what uh, Sam Altman and this crew should be doing. I think one of the things that attracts me and makes AI interesting as a revolution in technology is the social and ethical implications of this technology. Now, let me grab that and bring that back to what we do here in sustainability and real assets. One, world's largest asset class. Two, world's largest GHG emitter. Okay, I'm interested. Three, an imperative, an ethical, social imperative to improve the performance of that asset class for the betterment of all, because we all consume and participate in the built environment. We go to school there. My wife went to hospital to have her children. We certainly want the cleanest and best and most healthful environment there. It doesn't stop. This is our world today, and it will become increasingly built and urbanized. So don't we want to do that well? That is, to me, like a profound problem statement worth really looking at. Remember, wind the clock back, Matthew, when did you start your business? What
Two
year?
and a half years ago.
Okay. You started it at the exact peak of prop tech investment, right? 2022 and one half, or right about 2023, right there was exactly when the exuberance in prop tech probably crescendoed. And similarly, although there was a bit of a tail around sustainability and environmental solutioning, that drifted for another year or so. Where we are talking today is the new reality that property businesses are very difficult to change. They certainly don't change very fast. The data is extremely hard to work with and get. The customer is not in the technology business and is not historically used to using and leveraging technology. It's relatively new. And all of these things are swirling around, and not to mention the political sea change around so-called ESG. The consequence of all this is if you're a venture capitalist in this space, I think you need to underwrite very differently and set very different expectations than you might have. I think the prop tech and climate tech rebranding of a lot of firms to be those things conveniently at the peak. Notice the unbranding, right? That you're a prop tech or climate tech fund. I encourage you to go out and talk to those investors and see what they say today, how they've repositioned. So I think there's a lot that has to change. And then this might get back to entrepreneurs. If you want to leverage venture capital to develop your business, that is a way of doing it. It's a very specific path with expectations and consequences. And make sure that those investors are highly aligned with the problem statement and economics of your business. Because if the market changes and they change with it, you could be in trouble.
What is telling is there are a few players that, as the wind blows a new direction, people do reposition quite quickly. I remember even just as we were starting, I think it was actually right after this crescendo you were speaking of. So we were in a kind of a funny point where marketing budgets had all just been slashed in half. Okay. Everybody was used to 0.5% interest rates. And now all of a sudden it was flying up to 5, and it was this unspeakable thing. There's no new developments. The tech companies are all suffering. This buying growth VC strategy started to get, uh, I guess, recalibrated, for lack of a better word. And and then people were telling us, don't go with prop tech, because everyone just was saying that a year ago, and people feel kind of burnt by it. A lot of these companies that were heavily funded maybe not delivering, and we at the time we just thought this is super exciting, because if nobody else wants to touch the word prop tech, I think, do you guys not believe in what we're doing? We all have. You're all in these companies. If you don't like what you're doing, that's fine. But we're all doing it. We can try and dress it up however we want, but we're all doing it. We said we'll take. We want to be the only ones saying it then.
Well, you don't want to be the only ones. I remember when I started pitching for our business and people said, well, who's the competition? I said, there is no competition.
There is
And
competition. Yeah.
the clever venture capitalist response on that was, then you have no business because you're not that smart. A market is validated by the participation of a multitude of entities. Maybe you don't want too many, a completely saturated market, but you certainly want to have some evidence. Now, we were first mover in this category. At the time, we didn't use ESG as the term. We used green building. And we were first mover in bringing technology to a specific problem of measurement. And so there's always going to be one or two or three, kind of very early movers, first movers, blue ocean. But you don't want to be there too long. We talked about playing in a band, playing by yourself, you know, that's maybe how you get it started, but then ultimately you want to recruit, everyone to play the other instruments. So I think there's something to be learned there where you don't want to be lonely. You don't want to be alone, but you need to be willing to be alone for a little bit in order to create and catalyze a category sometimes. The next place that we're going, though, in sustainability
Mm.
is, I think, another lonely moment, because a lot of people have invested in the historical structures, the large assessments of sustainability, the reporting exercises, and the bureaucracy that's grown around that, which reduced a lot of chief sustainability officers to chief compliance officers. And we did lose sight of what is material to the business value creation. And I think the next place to go is to admit that we didn't build the best and most durable business case for sustainability. And in fact, that's okay. Good college try, but definitely no time to waste on building the better business case. And that's what we're out to do now. And I think we will be not alone on that, but it will be somewhat lonely to say these ways that we used to make money and these things that we delivered for value are worth reconsidering. We need to get back to highly specific ways that we create a change by a penny or $1 a square foot through sustainability. And the language that we use as an industry and expectations we have of service providers should change accordingly. And I think that's going to be a tough, adjustment, because all these things that we did kept us busy. All these different reports, these different scorecards, and so on it went. But the best in the business of sustainability are not there. They've moved on or stayed on very specific ways that create material value or lower risk. And I think the whole industry needs to shift back to that.
It's interesting what you're saying, because it seems like the industry is more varied in, let's say, by like a real estate business in strategy than ever, because some are really now, they didn't really consider the sustainability path until recently. Now they know they have to do it, but as soon as they started to realize it was an issue, they had liquidity issues, so they couldn't go for it. Now that they have some capex to spend, they know they can increase the value of their portfolio with different methods. It's interesting you're saying that some businesses are did you? It seems maybe moving away from that. What do you think the overall direction is going forwards?
I think the whole thing is equation where the equation has a set of coefficients and variables. I think what we established over the last 20 years was that you absolutely need to have a variable for sustainability, that variable should be defined by things like energy intensity and carbon intensity and climate risk, because these directly relate to NOI, insurability, and so forth. I think what we need to move now to is like the coefficient side. Well, to what magnitude, to what degree? And how do I directly change that coefficient? Can I move it up a lot? Well, how? That problem,
Mm,
and that question hasn't been answered well. We're getting closer with things like decarbonization and CapEx and scenario planning. I think that's a very fruitful path for us to go.
mm,
I think we have a lot of room to run on access to capital, and cost of borrowing. So green bonds are a good example of this, green loans, good example of that, because we are in an elevated interest rate environment. So like this is the thing is it's time to move from the generalities. We understand we've succeeded in establishing a variable for sustainability in real estate.
mm.
What we don't know really well is how to moderate that coefficient to make it more advantageous to us as we underwrite a given asset or buy and sell a portfolio or fund.
Right. I guess if I'm getting what you're saying, we understand the green premium is there. What levers do we really need to
Yeah.
pull to
Yeah.
get
How do I
those?
let every real estate owner look? We all have our skills. And in real estate, the value is started to be built the second you go and you raise capital, again, debt or equity. And if my cost is lower than your cost, all things being equal, I win, I outperform. So we're just going to get really good and better and better and better at each step in value creation. I'm just pointing out that one of those steps now, and frankly, every step you take, you need to consider this variable and you need to think about you as a actor in the real estate business. How can you maximize each of these or reduce, depending on your goals, these coefficients? They're in the equation. How do you alter them? And we're not good at that yet. It's not a uniform and well produced, which is exciting. It means that those who are capable have a lever that they can throw and get outperformance, and on
Yeah.
goes the game. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'd say it's yes a nuanced time, but it's probably the most exciting time the industry has ever had because there's nuance. All of a sudden, it's no longer buy a building, get rent. It's now a case of the capitalizing on these components that aren't delivering premiums and figuring that out. Yeah, it is an
Well,
exciting time for sure.
when I got into the real estate business in '08, um, my mentor, among others, said, "This is the best time to get in." And you're like, "That doesn't make any sense. This is horrible, right? This is really, really tough to make a living." Their point was, if you survive this, you can thrive in good times, right? Anyone can make money in the good times. And real estate business made money in the good times. Cost of capital is low, tenancy and occupancy were high. Um, the allocation of institutional investors towards real assets was increasing. These are not the case anymore. Now, you could have a negative view of that and say, well, this is very difficult, and maybe we should take a pass or pull back on our sustainability efforts and investments and analytics. I would argue the contrary because of what I just explained. This is precisely when you lean in, because other people will lean out and you can create competitive advantage.
Very, very cool. Last question for you, Matt. It feels like we could talk for quite a while, but um, what do you want to do? What's the next thing you really want to do? What's with everything we've been saying? What's next for you? Measurable.
Well, I told you I want to go skiing in a second, but first,
I won't hold you up too long then.
yeah, in terms of the business, what I want to see is whether or not we can fulfill on our mission. And it's an audacious one. That mission of sustainable real estate will long outlast me. But what I hope it doesn't outlast is our company. This company should be uh, part of and an essential component of that transformation. So I will be personally satisfied when we see Measurabl become the source of truth for real estate sustainability data globally. And if we can make, and we're making very good strides in that, if we can make some additional strides, I think that's within reach. What will happen from there is many other things have to follow from that source of truth. Once we can compare buildings on this, once we can establish the coefficient and we know how to impact that coefficient up or down, the opportunity to run from there will be someone else's obligation in my business. I'll be an old guy at that point in time. But we will have made, I think, a major change, which is we'll establish the coefficient, we'll establish the source of truth, we'll include sustainability in every aspect of real estate transactions, and then we will be a lot closer than we've ever been to sustainable real estate.
That is awesome. This has been a really good session. I do want to say a big thank you to you, Matt.
Likewise, Matthew. Thank you.